Good morning. I want to talk today about the next lunar month from August 4th through September 2nd. So let's see if I can share my screen. As usual, this will take a few seconds. I've got to get rid of some panels so I can see what I'm doing. So just bear with me. And I think we're ready. The lunar month, August 4th to September 2nd. So first, here's a quick review of some of the highlights from the last lunar month from July 5th to August 4th. And as expected, the mid-month conjunction of Mars, Uranus, and the fixed star Algol turned everything upside down. And as financial astrologers expected, there was a sharp reversal in the stock market. This conjunction was exact on the day that the Republican National Convention began, but was supported by some good aspects. And again, as expected, the convention was marked by a lot of angry and revolutionary rhetoric that everyone was in lockstep with. The Mars-Jupiter Algol conjunction was square Trump's natal Mars and ascendant, and right before the convention, there was an assassination attempt on his life. Also, Trump's chart in both June and July was marked by both good and bad aspects from Chiron. And he got not only some physical and judicial wounding, but also some lifelines thrown to him in both arenas by the good aspects from Chiron, and some other good aspects, by the way. Meanwhile, on July 18th, transing Pluto was exactly square Joe Biden's natal moon. And the day before, he was diagnosed with COVID, and shortly after, he withdrew from the presidential race. It's been quite a month, and August will have its own fireworks for us to deal with. Okay. Now, among the more worrisome aspects in August are Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto, Jupiter square Saturn, Mars conjunct Jupiter, Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto, and Mars square Saturn. Jupiter in Gemini sesquiquadrate Pluto in Aquarius is a continuation of the 2020 conjunction of these planets. And we will see conflict between those with progressive ideas of growth and the current powers that be. Jupiter square Saturn will also be a continuation of their 2020 conjunction at the beginning of Aquarius. And this square will likely create tension between progressives and conservatives, between those who want to expand and those who want to contract. By the way, in 2020, when we had Jupiter conjunct Saturn right at the beginning of Aquarius, this was the start of a approximately 300-year shift from the conjunction occurring in earth signs to now occurring in air signs. And that represents a shift from material things and possessions to a world dominated by technology, creativity, ideas, and relationships. That is the initial vision. But with the square, this is the first test of that vision. How do we proceed? How do we go forward to realize that vision? Do we just go forward with unlimited growth and progressivism, or do we need to put the brakes on some things and proceed with a little bit more caution? Okay. Now, interestingly, the square between Jupiter and Saturn, it will be exact on the day of the full moon and the beginning of the Democratic National Convention. And there's a good chance that we will see battles between the Democratic left and right at that gathering. Mars conjunct Jupiter in Gemini could result in expansion of violence while also energizing thought and invention with others. And that violence, it could be physical, could be just rhetoric. And finally, Mars and Gemini, sesquiquadrate Pluto and square Saturn, could result in either angry rhetoric or physical violence. Like I said, August will have its own fireworks for us to deal with. However, Pluto's sextile Neptune continues, and this is filling everyone with a yearning for power that is compassionate. But with Neptune in the last degree of Pisces, the world is a little crazy. When a planet is in the last degree of a sign, we call that the anaretic uh, degree. And that is when the influence of the sign it's been in is dying, so that the influence of the next sign can begin. But when something is dying, that's also can be a time when all the junk, all the schmutz that's been held deep down inside begins to come out. Uh, and with Neptune at the end of Pisces, this is not only the end of its journey through Pisces, it's the end of a much larger cycle through the entire zodiac. And the last time we had Neptune in Aries was at the beginning of the American Civil War. So things are a little extra crazy, a little extra misinformation going on now, uh, maybe some extra delusion out there. Right here, you can see some of the major aspects that will occur in August and September. And the lunar month ends September 2nd, which is about here. So we're looking mainly at this stuff over here. Neptune sextile Pluto, that really continues. And this is some higher vibration in a sense. Some will be consciously aware of it. Most will not be so consciously aware, but people will probably tend to want power to exercise more compassion. People are responding to something higher, even if they do it in ways which reflect misinformation at the same time. And here you can see all the hard aspects. Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto, Jupiter square Saturn, Mars conjunct Jupiter, Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto, Mars square Saturn. We get into one nice aspect, uh, Mars sextile Chiron, just at toward the end of August. And Uranus sextile Neptune starts to gain an influence. Then we have Mars semisextile Uranus, which is an aspect of change. We'll talk about that more when we get to it. Okay, as usual, I'm going to look at the charts for the new moon, the first quarter moon, the full moon, the third quarter moon, and then end with just a very brief look at the next new moon, which starts the next lunar month. Looking at this chart, you see a lot of blue lines, which are good aspects. But what's going to be more important to us are going to be the aspects that become exact either on the day of the new moon or in the week between the new moon and the first quarter moon. And we see there, you see a lot of green, which represents change or adjustment. You see a lot of red, which represents hard aspects. And the red, they're all sesquiquadrates, which are turning points or breaking points. You see Mercury going retrograde. You see a sign change as Venus enters Virgo. And there's only one good aspect that becomes exact in the week following the new moon, and that's going to be Sun sextile Jupiter. Okay, now with Venus making a quincunx to Neptune, that's the first aspect that becomes exact. Venus here, think of it as representing people's values, what they see as good, and their right brain, how they feel about things. And quincunxes require change or adjustment. And you might actually notice that not long after this exact quincunx between Venus and Neptune, we have an exact quincunx between Venus and Pluto. And this suggests that our values regarding compassion and power are going to have to adjust in some respects. This could also be misinformation that causes us to adjust. We may have to recognize that we're fed a lot of information and adjust our views accordingly. So that is going to be going on in the week following the new moon. Okay. Then immediately thereafter, Venus, it's going to enter into Virgo. And this is going to be a little shift in focus from personal creativity and me, our own egos, to performing acts of service and maybe being more concerned about our own health and employment. So we're going to get a fair number of sign changes this month, and they're all going to denote shifts in attitude of one sort or another. All right. I don't usually include Mercury in these forecasts because it's a very fast moving planet. Its influence doesn't last all that long, but this one is important. In the week following the new moon, Mercury is going to turn retrograde. Now, when a planet turns retrograde, its influence turns inward rather than outward. So, with Mercury ruling thought and communication, this is going to be a period which lasts for most of the month, during which we're going to be going inward and thinking about things more, probably mulling over things that we're hearing regarding the political campaigns going on in America. But Mercury, when it turns retrograde, we also think of it as the trickster, and that can cause additional reversals in the stock market. Okay, following that, we get Venus making its exact quincunx to Pluto. And as I was pointing out, the quincunxes from Neptune and Pluto are affecting Venus this week. And there are going to be things which are going to be pressuring us uh, to change our attitudes, adjust our attitudes to the higher energies of Pluto and Neptune, power and compassion or spirituality. Then we're going to have Sun, and not only the Sun, well, no, it'll be just the Sun because the Moon moves on. Sun will sesquiquadrate Neptune, and sesquiquadrates, they're turning points or breaking points. So this could be some sort of turning point involving either spirituality, compassion, or just all the misinformation we're being fed. And I saw a headline just yesterday that the Justice Department, I think, has decided to try and shut down TikTok in America on the grounds that it could be used by China for misinformation in our upcoming presidential election. Then we'll have Jupiter making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto, another turning point or breaking point. And Jupiter wants to expand things. It's in Gemini, so this has to do with communication and ideas. And this could represent uh, people out there or businesses out there who want to expand their communication and media or their inventions, but they're having some problems with the powers that be. By the way, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury also has to do with communication. And when it turns retrograde, that is classically a time when all sorts of communication uh, devices and communication between people, you run into a lot of snafus and misunderstandings, miscommunications. So that will characterize also a lot of August. Now we're going to have one good day when the sun will make a sextile to Jupiter. That'll be a day, probably 2 or 3 days where people feel a little bit more expansive and a little freer and like things are going their way. But that is going to be followed by the sun making a quincunx to Saturn. So this is sort of like paying the price after the good times. You're going to have to make some adjustments when it comes to discipline, regulation, control. And then we'll end the month with Venus making a sesquiquadrate to Chiron, and this could cause some wounding to people somewhere. It could cause some wounding of people's values or their ideas of what they think is good, what they think is bad. Okay, and here's a little table showing the dates and times when all of those aspects I talked about become exact. And here is a graphic showing, again, when these aspects, many of them become exact and how long they last. And you can see that Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto, that's going to dominate the week. So it's going to be a little bit of a battle between the growth and expansion that some people want, particularly in communication and ideas, and the powers that be that perhaps want to shut down some of that growth and expansion. Okay, and this is going to bring us to the first quarter moon. And you can see here we got a lot of red indicating challenges, and only one blue 2 or 3 days when things are nice. We're going to start out with Mars making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto, and that could be particularly aggressive or violent. Since Mars is in Gemini, it might just be angry rhetoric, but it could also be physical violence of some sort somewhere in the world. Pluto is power, death, transformation. Mars is assertion, aggression, energy, and violence. Uh, it could be something good if both sides work things out in the best possible way, but that doesn't always happen. We usually get a little bit of the best outcome, but a lot more of the more negative outcomes. So this could be a week in which we could see some aggression or violence either in speech or in action. And that's going to be followed by Mars conjunct uh, Jupiter, which is just going to expand all of that. Okay. And then we get a bit of a break when Sun makes a trine to Chiron. This will be 2 or 3 days of healing for us. And we might feel more transcendent energies when this trine takes place. Because Chiron, it really wants us to, it nudges us to go beyond the visible world to the invisible world, the larger spiritual side of things. But our hard shells often have to be cracked in the process, and that's where the wounding comes in. But 2 or 3 days here will feel probably pretty good. Unfortunately, that is followed by Mars square Saturn. Mars is aggression, Saturn is regulation, restriction. This is a time when a lot of people could feel very frustrated and anger could boil over. Okay, then we get to Venus sesquiquadrate Pluto, and this is going to be another turning point between the people who had the power and what the people actually want and value. What exactly will happen? Hard to say, but it's worth keeping an eye on. And then we get to Venus square Jupiter, and this is where some of the growth and expansion will create some conflict with people's values, what they think of as good and bad. Again, exactly how it's going to play out, I don't know at this point. This is just a weather report. But as we get closer to this uh, square, we might get a better idea of what decisions people are making, how they're responding to this weather. Okay, and now once again, you can see the dates and times uh, when all of these things occur. And it's interesting, we have Venus trine Chiron on the same day that Mars is square Saturn. So one influence is going to be good and healing and transcendent. The other is going to be frustrating and maybe more aggressive. So that'll be an interesting day to keep an eye on. And here you can look at this graph and see the aspects at a glance for the week. And we see that Mars conjunct Jupiter is pretty much going to dominate most of the week, and it overlaps and is followed by Mars square Saturn. So this is expansion of assertion or aggression being followed by frustration of assertion or aggression. And this brings us to the full moon, which will be quite a time. This is also going to be the day that the Democratic National Convention starts. And you might notice that this chart has two T-squares in it. We have, let's see, sun exactly opposite moon. That's the full moon, both being strongly squared by Uranus. So there's going to be some chaos this day, some revolution, some rebelling that could occur on the floor during the Democratic National Convention, or it could be protests occurring outside. And then we have another T square where Venus is opposite Saturn and Jupiter and Mars are squaring both of those. And the square between Jupiter and Saturn becomes exact on this day. And this will probably be a conflict between progressives and moderate or conservative Democrats during the convention. There could be a battle over the platform. And some people are going to be feeling like their values are being restricted. And with Mars and Uranus, things could get quite heated. So, the first aspect on this day, which actually occurs slightly before the new moon, is Venus opposite Saturn. As I said, uh, people will feel some restriction on their values and they won't like it. Then we also have Sun square Uranus. Of course, Moon is going to be squaring Uranus too. I don't usually include Moon and Mercury in these reports because they're such fast moving influences. But at the new moon, that's going to be more important because, as I said, we have this T square. So there's going to be a lot of things happening that break up the pattern. Rebellion, revolutionary rhetoric. And they'll probably be happening inside and outside the convention, perhaps. And then on the same day, Jupiter makes its exact square to Saturn. As I said, I'm expecting probably a floor fight between the progressives and the moderates or conservatives in the Democratic Party. Now, earlier we had Venus making a quincunx to Neptune, followed by quincunx to Pluto, and now the Sun is going to do the same thing. So again, there are going to be adjustments that have to be made regarding misinformation on a lower level, compassion and spirituality on a higher level. Sun making a quincunx to Neptune, adjustments have to be made to how we exercise compassion. And when we get to Sun quincunx Pluto, adjustments have to be made to how we exercise power. Well, before we get to that quincunx with Pluto, the Sun will move into Virgo following Venus's move into Virgo. And that is going to be where, again, we get more of an emphasis on service to others and also on our own health and employment. Jobs may become an issue at this time. And then we have the Sun quincunx Pluto we talked about, and that's followed by Venus square Mars. And that is when there is going to be some sort of conflict between the energy uh, being put into communication or communication companies and our values and the things we like. Uh, this could possibly have to do with, TikTok being thrown out of the United States, which I know a lot of people won't like because the young people use TikTok quite a bit for all sorts of things. And then that's followed by Venus quincunx Chiron. So this is going to be some sort of adjustment that has to be made when it comes to healing ourselves. people may have to change their beliefs and values in order to bring the country back together again, America, that is. This could also result possibly in some wounding to people's values. But we end this week with Mars making a sextile to Chiron, which will be more healing, more beneficial. And this will be some sort of energetic kind of healing or communication that brings healing, or thoughts and ideas that help bring healing. Again, I don't know exactly what will happen. This is just a weather report. Something along these lines will happen, but we have to wait and see. And now this table again gives you the exact dates and times for all of those things I just talked about. You can see a lot of stuff happens this time on the 22nd. Sun goes into Virgo, Sun makes a quincunx with Pluto, and Venus is going to be squaring Mars. So people are going to be worked up a bit. And also, a lot of stuff happens on the 19th, the beginning of the Democratic Convention. Venus opposite Saturn, Sun square Uranus, Jupiter square Saturn. So that's going to be a very tense day and probably, in some respects, maybe a tense start to the convention. But I don't know if it's going to be tension inside or outside from protesters, or both. And here you can see the transits for the week, and Jupiter square Saturn. That is what's going to dominate this week. And it overlaps almost completely with Venus square Mars. So there'll be some frustrations, some tensions, probably some anger. Now we get to the third quarter moon. From the brown lines, light brown, dark brown, you see there are going to be a lot of shifts going on, sign shifts or uh, planets moving from retrograde to direct or direct to retrograde. We've got a couple of good aspects and a couple of tense aspects. It begins with Venus trine Uranus, and that is going to be some creativity. That might be good for the stock market too, since Uranus is in Taurus, which rules money and possessions. So people will feel particularly creative on the day that this happens. But that's followed by Venus opposite Pluto, Neptune. And this is when we're going to be more susceptible to misinformation and delusions about things, most likely. And then Mercury will turn direct. So we'll spend a lot of the month being very introspective, maybe in this country, in America, thinking about the presidential candidates. But by the end of the month, we may have come to some sort of decision about what we're going to do. And then Venus will leave Virgo and go into Libra. And that's going to put the focus on relationships for a while. And Venus rules Libra. So this third quarter moon, this lunar month, may be followed by a month which is a little bit more pleasant for many people as they focus on harmonious relationships with others. And having Venus then making a trine to Pluto, that is only going to help things along. Pluto will help empower these relationships in a harmonious way. But then we get into Sun sesquiquadrate Chiron, and that's going to be a turning point or a breaking point where we may experience some wounding of some sort as we try to help heal ourselves and the world. Then we have Mars semisextile Uranus, and recall that Mars was conjunct Uranus at the start of the Republican National Convention in mid-July. That's where we saw a lot of fiery and angry and revolutionary rhetoric. When we get to the semisextile, well, the conjunction's like division. The semi-sextile is where we start thinking about, okay, how can we enact that vision? So, whether it's a good vision or a bad vision that you or someone else had on July 15th, here's where you're starting to try and move that vision forward. And that's going to be followed by Uranus retrograde. Wow. Creativity, it will take a pause and reflect upon what it's doing. And since Uranus is in Taurus, this can impact finances and the stock market and people's possessions. So there could possibly be another reversal in the stock market around this point as people reflect upon things and where they're going. And then right at the end of this week, Pluto is going to retrograde back into Capricorn. Uh, and this will be interesting. We'll have Pluto back in Capricorn for a lot of the fall. And I'll still be in Capricorn at the time of the presidential election, though I think he'll be moving direct at that point. And in the last degree of Capricorn, when it moves back into Capricorn, remember when Pluto moved from Capricorn into Aquarius, that is a transfer of power from individuals to the people. And the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was during the American and French revolutions, when we saw power being shifted from the king to the people in both countries. But now, when Pluto goes back into Capricorn, it's like we're reevaluating things. Do I really like this shared power, this group power, or do I want a powerful individual? Probably at the time of the presidential election, people will vote not necessarily for a person who is conservative, but for a person who appears strong and capable. We want a strong and capable leader. At the same time, since Pluto will be in the very last minutes of Capricorn on November 5th, people may be looking forward to Pluto going back into Aquarius, and they may want a more humanitarian vision to occur. They may want a government that is more responsive to the people and shares power with people, but they want also to elect a strong leader who can bring that about. So who will they vote for? It's hard to say. Uh, both candidates at this point, Trump and Harris, have some good aspects which could lead them to victory. But it's also the case that something could happen to Trump that could cause him to have to drop out of the race. He's fairly old, just as Biden is. By the way, an interesting thing about Biden, I don't think he's really gone downhill mentally, as a lot of Republicans suggest, but we've all seen him go downhill physically over the past few months. And the interesting thing is at the April 8th solar eclipse, we had Sun, Moon, and Chiron exactly conjunct at 19 degrees 24 minutes of Aries. And in the July 2nd, 1776 chart, for the passage of the Declaration of Independence, that's the one that I use for America. I think there are several charts that work for America. July 4th charts, passage of the Constitution, all of those were important stages in the creation of our country. But I think the July 2nd, 1776 chart works a little better. And in that chart, the Sun Pluto midpoint is at exactly 19 degrees 24 minutes Aries. So in that chart, the Sun represents the head of the nation, the president. Pluto, death or transformation of some sort. Chiron wounding. And fortunately, Joe Biden has not passed away. He's still with us. But over the past few months since that eclipse, we've seen his vitality, his physical vitality, wounded, and his role has transformed. Okay, so with Kamala Harris taking his place, she is a younger, more vital candidate, and she could be a strong figure that appeals to many people when we get to November 5th. Okay, again, here you can see when all of these aspects and shifts become exact. And here's kind of a graph for the week. Let me go back here a second. We see a lot of activity on 28th, 29th. So those will be important days. And also on September 1st, Uranus turns retrograde and Pluto moves into Capricorn. And let's see, the longest lasting aspect will be this Mars semisextile Uranus occurring in the latter half of the week. So that's when we should see not only the Republicans, but also people in general beginning to try and implement whatever vision they had on July 15th when these two planets were in conjunction. This could be a very assertive, aggressive, revolutionary kind, kind of feeling, or creativity, active creativity. That would be a good way for it to manifest. But whatever the vision was, this is when people start to make the first steps to enact it. And this takes us up to the next new moon on September 2nd, 2024. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this. We'll talk about more when I discuss the next lunar month. But you can see here that there's a lot of red, which indicates challenges, difficulties. And then there's a lot of blue, which indicates things which are going to be easier for us and more harmonious. And then we have Mars making an inconjunct. Let's see, I should have actually written quincunx. The quincunx is an inconjunct, but so is the semisextile. So Mars will make a quincunx to Pluto, which suggests that there will have to be some adjustment made between aggression, assertion, aggression, action, and the powers that be, which are going to be a little bit more authoritative at this point, more in the hands of individuals since Pluto is back in Capricorn. Okay. And let's see. We've got another couple of slides here. This one just shows you at a glance when a lot of these aspects will become exact. And this is another graph showing when various aspects become exact throughout the month. The next lunar month, it starts on September 2nd. So we're really just looking at this part right here for this lunar month. Things like Saturn making a semi-square to Pluto, that is going to take place in September in the next lunar month. Okay, and that is going to be it for this lunar month from August 4th through September 2nd. So let me stop sharing my screen, and I'm back. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you find it informative and somewhat thought-provoking. And this is just sort of a general overview of the lunar month and how it affects the world, even though I do talk a little bit more about America since that's where I live. I'll do two other slideshows where I talk about how the lunar month is going to affect particular countries and particular people. So I hope you join me for those. But for now, I'll just say so long and be well.